Hey, this is Justin Vernon of Bon Iver, and this is the LSQ podcast. I think I was always trying to communicate. I think it was about, I loved Bob Marley and the Wailers, and the Indigo Girls were huge, and they were communicating things about inner peace and also about outer peace. Marley was so political in Jamaica and things like that, and I think I was always trying to communicate things to my classmates or whoever's in the gym wherever we were playing. And so I think I was always trying to use my voice to fill that sound, to try to move people. That's really the main goal.
Hey, it's Jenny LSQ, and that, of course, was Bon Iver's Justin Vernon, who is my guest in this episode of the LSQ podcast, the final episode of 2025 and Season 8 of the show. We recorded this at Justin's home studio back in June, shortly after the release of Bon Iver's beautiful latest album, fABLE, which recently earned him another couple of well-deserved Grammy nominations. I loved this conversation so much, and I'm so grateful to Justin for his openness in a talk that explores his entire history as a creative person and music maker. Justin and I go back a ways, and we've done shorter interviews over the years, but this gave us a chance to go super in-depth. And I loved hearing stories about his early life and creative experiences from when he was a kid, like listening to John Prine's Hello in There on his Discman in the back of his parents' minivan and realizing that music was his calling. About discovering artists he loved as a kid like Fugazi and the Mighty Bosstones, and the Dave Matthews Band and Baaba Maal. About his dad driving him and his friends from Eau Claire, Wisconsin to Minneapolis to see bands like Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden. About the deep camaraderie of his high school band with friends he still collaborates with today, and the vital growth that came from moving the band to Raleigh, North Carolina in his 20s. Oh, and you've also got to hear the story about Prince coming to a Gayngs show at First Avenue and nearly joining the band on stage. And there's so much more. Let's get into it. Welcome, Justin Vernon, to the LSQ podcast.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for letting us record this in your space here in LA.
Oh yeah, I mean I don't ever have people over, so it's super fun.
And also thank you to Ash, your engineer here, who's recording us. And I'm curious. So earlier today, before I got here, was there some recording shenanigans going on, or what?
Mm-mm.
No, okay.
Well, actually, since the record came out, we talked, I guess, a month or two before.
Yeah.
Nothing has really happened. I've just been in the studio in Wisconsin, in the studio here. I've only been in setup mode. I keep saying I just keep setting up. I don't know what I'm setting up for, but I just never had this amount of time to be like, you know what, I'd really like my studio to feel like this. And it's just months and months. We'll spend a week or 10 days on it and then go away and then go to the other studio. And so it's all just building for the future kind of thing. I don't know. I haven't been doing a lot. I've worked on music with friends here and there, but I really haven't been actively in sessions or anything.
But the space, your studio space in Eau Claire, I mean, was that not a setting it up to be optimal for exactly what you want in the way that this is, or? I
mean, it was sort of it went under the knife in 2019 for a renovation, and we had this big new live room, and it was very nice. But when we moved in, I was like, this is we need to kick some mud on the tires. It was so brand new, and all the sort of conception ideas of how I wanted it to be wasn't really able to, I was in a hurry kind of to move back in. And so right around the time the record came out, I just was like, let's hit zero again. And we moved everything out, and I've just been slowly kind of changing it into, I guess, how I want my workflow to be now. And again, just getting everything set up, getting it all ready. Haven't really done anything with it, but it's feeling good.
But when you think about this concept of what you want it to be, or what is the sort of, what are some adjectives or something that come to mind when you think about your creative space and thus your studio space, what it needs to be?
Mm-hmm. I think it's readiness. I think it's oh, that guitar over there, that always sounds like that. And when we want that color on something, we have that sound tried and true. If we want that 70s kind of squashy acoustic guitar sound, that Bob Seger thing, that's that station over there. Or if we want the Daniel Lanois, bass sound, the DI, we set it up how he had it set up with the same kind of pre's, and we kind of copy that, and that's that. But there's also another bass, setup. There's the drum sets always set up. it's set up in a way where like out there is like everything's going, and like you can sit down as a band, play in the room without having to put headphones on, and without really having to be like, all right, let's spend all day like getting a sound. It's just like, no, it's going. We haven't perfected it yet. We've just been like, me and a couple friends just will go there and play and just kind of work the kinks out. I'd say we're like 70% there in this space and in the space in Wisconsin.
The Daniel Lanois sound that you want, how do you know the way you referenced the way he had it set up? How do you know?
I've watched a lot of like little snippets of him and just like known that the boards that he works on. In Wisconsin, we aren't quite doing the board thing, but we got this console here in LA. And it's like a new version of the old consoles he worked on. But when I was really quite young, I worked on little miniature consoles. I would record bands in Eau Claire, and I would just have like 4 tracks or little Yamaha mixers going into like a very, like a little 2-track tape machine or something. So I'm kind of getting back into that, getting my chops back with that. I think being an engineer is not something I necessarily identify with, but I think it is like a huge part of like the way I hear and want to construct music. So, but yeah, I mean, the way that he always had his like all the preamps and stuff are out near the musicians. So like, his place up here, I think it's in Silver Lake. He just has the board, and then there's just instruments in the room, and they're all just like set up and ready to go. And I just studied his records. I think Oh Mercy by Bob Dylan and Time Out of Mind and the Emmylou Wrecking Ball record, they just sound right. They just sound like musicians that are able to play. And I think I don't really know what the traditional rules of engineering are. There seems to be a school that everyone goes to, but then all the people that are truly great seem to break all those rules, and I think he's one of those.
But there's also something aesthetic. I mean, I get the sort of readiness thing and the having it sound so that you're not distracted by that when you're inspired. But just I haven't been to your studio in Eau Claire, but I have seen I've seen you go on Instagram Live from there, and for a minute I can see a little bit of what's going on. During COVID times, I feel like there was some of that happening.
Yeah.
But here, this is just to lightly describe this space for folks. It's like it's a home. I mean, we're in your home when you're here. It's very rich with vibe. It's like a cabin. It's like the walls are painted white. It feels like the most vintage type of home I've been in Los Angeles. It's like got a little house on the prairie, but like all white, sort of whitewashed, and it's lovely. And it's very much like the space where you live. Your bedroom's in the back, and this is, but the main focus is this room that we're in right now, where you've got the board and where the magic happens or whatever. I'm sure magic happens all over the place. And is the Eau Claire space like that as well, where you're like, I live in this, there is very little separation between the kind of space that makes me feel at ease to go to sleep at night and to make my breakfast and my coffee, and the kind of space where I want to walk over there and start recording.
There's like 30 feet of separation. I think actually at April Base, the studio in Eau Claire, for a long time it was just everything was on top of each other. And now we have a sliding door. So that seems to separate the two wings of the house. But, it's steps. I'm from bed to piano, it's 50 steps. And so there is like this, like kind of, I call it my little apartment, which is kind of in the way back of the house. It's like a bigger version of this. And I walk up there and I got my window open and I got my Law and Order box set going, or whatever. And then I can kind of hide out up there if I need to. But for years there was a lot of people sleeping in bunks. We had like 18 bunks in like a 4-bedroom house, and it was just kind of nuts. And that's why we needed to kind of renovate and kind of hit the reset and sort of just lifestyles in general. But now it's kind of like an adult home where there's just like, it's just the live room is huge. It has these skylights, and it's just, all the synths, all the guitars, they're all ready to go.
What's your favorite era of Law and Order?
Oh, man, gosh, that's a good question. It's got to be Lenny Briscoe.
Oh, yeah, Lenny Briscoe.
He's got to be my favorite. I'd say
Briscoe and Green, yeah.
Yeah, Green, I think. And Green sort of was part of a very pivotal X-Files episode. That actor, The Unnatural is the X-Files episode where he plays like this alien Negro Leagues baseball star. And he's like, it's an unbelievable episode. But so I have a soft spot for him. But yeah, seasons 4 through 8, in there, I'd say, is my favorite.
I also seriously fuck with Criminal Intent, the Law and Order Criminal Intent.
Yep.
D'Onofrio series.
D'Onofrio, yeah, he's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Was there ever an era when you were much younger where you did the thing of like going to sterile studio spaces and like is sort of finding the perfect balance of home studio a reaction to having ever done that, or has it always been a recording at home thing for you? Because I know the early Bon Iver stuff was self-recorded.
Well, and even before then, I mean, when I was, like I said, when I was 12 and 13, I was getting little gigs to record ska bands in my 4-track because I knew how to do it. And I don't know if I was particularly good at it, but I was doing it. And I liked doing it. And so I think it's always just been at home. And whenever I've been in sort of studios, like I really like working at Henson and what's the other one here in LA, Conway. They're not sterile. They have tons of vibe. But oftentimes in LA, there's just not a lot of instruments around. You have to kind of like bring SIR in to bring in guitars and extra things. They might have a great piano. You know, like at Henson, they have the Carole King piano and Joni Mitchell Blue, and we recorded on that and stuff. But in general, it's just my confidence kind of wanes because I don't know how to use this stuff. I don't know how to be fast and expressive and all that stuff with it. So I've always been more comfortable, and I won't anytime soon. It's fun the challenge is fun to like go into, you know, other spaces and you know, even be like kind of a bystander. Like I keep dreaming about going down to Nashville just to get like an internship to like learn how the hot country guys make those drums sound like that or something, you know, just to learn. But in general, if I'm trying to like spearhead a day and try to get something done, I obviously want to be around my own shit.
So, yeah, I didn't realize when you first referenced like recording your friends' bands that you meant that it was when you were that young, that was how early in the thing you were learning how to record is what you're saying, like 12 or so.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's go back to before that. What do you remember about the first times as a kid that you felt like a creative urge?
Yeah, I mean, loved music. We were a big John Prine family. You know, my dad still loves like Cajun music, Zydeco music. So we always had it in the house. But creatively, I mean, I was drawing. I thought I wanted to be a drawer, if that was a profession you could be. But I think my dad showed me some chords on his old Saga acoustic when I was 11, 12. And then immediately I kind of was writing songs. I wrote a song called like John's Ladder, I think it was called. And then, you know, right around that time, so that was the creative urge. I learned a Rolling Stones song, a Cream song, and then John Prine. And then I was writing songs kind of immediately. Had a band with some friends and we'd play, you know, talent shows and whatnot. So that was pretty early, you know. Sixth grade was my first band, summer between 5th and 6th grade with my friend Joe Westerland. And we still collaborate to this day. We're still good friends. But yeah, I think it was right around, I remember in 8th grade I heard this John Prine song called Hello in there. Holding my Discman and my parents' minivan in the back, you know, and I was like, okay, now I actually really know what I want to do. Like I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. And I just never really look back, I guess.
So you were self-taught playing instruments?
I had a guitar teacher. My dad taught me some chords. My mom was my piano teacher. That was actually like the hardest portion of our relationship ever because I wanted to do it a certain way. And she was not classically trained, but she went to music school and was like a organ player in the church and everything. But yeah, when like in high school, I took a theory class, but I felt like it like knocked me back a little bit. A lot of my great friends who are really proficient musicians were just doing better in the music classes. And I was always writing songs and we were all in bands together. But I remember just recently, a funny little anecdote, when Brian Wilson died a couple weeks ago, one of my great band directors, Steve Wells, me and a couple close friends of mine that still live in Eau Claire, sent him a text. And we're like, hey, everyone's, you know, grieving Brian Wilson and stuff, but, you know, we just wanted to let you know that when he died, we thought of you because he took this one day out in class where he's like, all right, everybody don't put your horns together. We're just going to listen to music today. And he showed us like the Pet Sounds vocal only, like the acapellas of Pet Sounds. And he just blasted it and told us about Brian Wilson and just how good music was. And we just never forgot that. And so like we always have had Mr. Wells tied to Brian Wilson in that way. And Well, I forget why I told that story, but
So that's when you're a kid that you're growing up in, at that point it's like the early 90s or something, right?
Yep, mid 90s.
Right. So the, John Prine and Beach Boys and stuff, that's classic rock at that point. It's classic.
Right.
Was there music of the era that appealed to you that you and your homies were into?
Definitely Fugazi.
Yeah.
Definitely Fugazi was the number one. But like it was also like Mighty Bosstones, because we were like jazz kids, and Dave Matthews Band was really big for us because I think they had alternate instruments and they were making songs with, intricate arrangements with these other instruments, and they were definitely like good musicians. I mean, I loved Pearl Jam and Nirvana, Soundgarden, but, Fugazi really rose above a lot of things. And then, we were all studying, me and my friends, we were all studying quite a bit. So we were getting into African music, Baaba Maal and things like that would reach the borders, music. In Eau Claire, stuff we would buy there. We were also signing up for BMG, that thing where you'd get the free CDs, but we would make up names, so we would just get like, 60 free CDs sent to the house for like $20. But
And were you going to see shows? At what point did that start to be a thing?
yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot of shows in Eau Claire. There were some seminal Eau Claire bands, There was this thing called Ska Fest and AIDS Benefit. There were the two shows at the university. Subsequently, when I was in college, that's where I saw Raleigh play, our friend Jenny Lewis. But they would have shows, twice a year, and so
not at Ska Fest for Raleigh.
No. They had their own. They had their own headlining gig. But I'd go see bands in Eau Claire and stuff. But most of all, we would be, as soon as we got our car and stuff. Even before then, my dad would drive us up to Minneapolis and shows at First Ave or Royal Wilkins. My dad took me to Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden on 2 different weekends. 8th grade, one of my friend's dad, who was also the vice principal of our school, drove us up to see Mr. Bungle.
Ooh.
And the great band from Japan, Melt Banana, opened up.
Wow.
So it was a lot of going to shows in Minneapolis, which is really where we'd start to really see the world coming to our door.
Rilo Skiley, I just thought of as their the ska version of them. So it's interesting because thinking about like the John Prine kind of category of stuff, and then this jazz, ska, world music kind of lane of things that you were interested in. I can hear that sort of in all these years later, the things that have like the Japanese cold brew drip dripped on down into the music that you make now. Yep. And the songs that you were writing, you referenced sort of the first song. Would you say if you went back to listen to those earliest songs right now, or if somebody who's a fan of your music heard them, that they would recognize, sort of be able to be like, is that like when you see baby pictures and
right.
Is there something uncanny about even those early songs that you can relate to your current music?
I think the one thing that it probably can is like I think I was always trying to communicate. I think it was about, I loved Bob Marley and the Wailers, and there was something about, and the Indigo Girls were huge, and they were communicating things about inner peace and also about outer peace, between, Marley was so political in Jamaica and things like that. And I think I was always trying to communicate things to my classmates or whoever's in the gym wherever we were playing. And so I think I was always trying to use my voice to fill that sound, to try to move people, I guess. That's probably the one thing. I mean, it's pretty, I never would call it embarrassing, but it's, as a 12-year-old kid trying to write songs. But if there was something that somebody might be able to pull out of there, is that it was definitely my passion, I guess, for it, that I was really I've always been trying to move people. That's really the main goal.
But was it a self-soothing mechanism even back then?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, a way to, get my crush, the information about my crush out onto paper and onto my 4-track or whatever. And process things, get the big feelings out from inside the cavern, Yeah, absolutely self-soothing, 100%.
Yeah, so you found that there was an effect. There was an outcome, which is that something you were struggling with felt better if you did that.
Yeah, every time. I mean, I still feel that. I mean, with this record, even now I'm 44, it's like the same things happening I'm able to maybe make things even clearer. I mean, I guess, all these new songs of mine are standing on the legs of those old songs, and I think in a lot of ways.
What would you say after that first phase, but before Bon Iver as we know it now, were important, the more sort of important moments of discovery, or sort of woodshed moments for realizing like where you wanted to take your sound or take your project? Because obviously you had projects that you did to Yarmouth Edison and stuff before this, but what were significant pivot points for you in discovering where you wanted to go?
Well, Yarmouth Edison was kind of college, and that was me and Joe, the guy I was just telling about, Joe Westerland, and the Cook brothers, Phil and Brad. And that was college, but we were all in a band in high school together, and it was just a bigger band with horns and stuff, and we're all still tight friends. And that was like us. We're really a band. We practiced every weekend. We played gigs at our parents' backyards. We played gigs wherever. And the togetherness of that, I still carry with me every day. I think we had such a passion for each other, and, discovery of music, writing a song together. And, I'd bring songs. The band was called Mount Vernon, it's a very dorky, funny name, but it was not a dorky camaraderie. It was an unbelievably emotionally open, vulnerable, emotionally mature, frankly, group of folks, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. And then, Yarmouth Edison in college, and that was the big thing then. And then we moved to North Carolina, and that was the year of biggest growth when I was 25. Just graduated high school, and then went down there, me, Brad, Phil, Joe, and a couple other friends, and we practiced 4 times a week. We really broke apart the whole idea of what the band was. We were challenging each other to sing lead. We were challenging each other to learn the different kinds of music that we had become passionate about in our college years, but never really, we were playing like minimal pieces that Brad would write, these long kind of tributes to Alvin Lucier, and like really, different kind of stuff, and like the stuff that Joe Westerland was studying in Bennington, and the kind of Appalachian music that Phil was learning. So we were learning all these types of music, and in that year, that was definitely the year that we, just grew. And like that was the year Brad was like, "Hey, sing this song in falsetto. Like I've heard you do that before." And like we did a Mahalia Jackson song, and that was like kind of when the falsetto was found. I was all singing along to all these women my whole life, and just having a lower voice, I just found this new thing. And we broke up after that because I think it was just kind of a pressure cooker situation, and we all kind of just splintered after that, and I went right into making the Bon Iver stuff from then. There was a time when I went to Ireland too, when I was 19, that I was just like working in a cell phone store in Ireland, and I wrote probably the most songs I've ever wrote in a short period of time, probably like 50 songs in 4 months, recording them on my mini disc or what have you. But I would say that year in Raleigh, North Carolina was the biggest year of sort of change and growth. And then bam, blink my eyes, 20 years later, here I am after all this Bon Iver shit.
What was a pressure cooker about the band setup?
I think we were learning all this different kind of music, and we did this residency at this little gallery in North Carolina. And we did it like one show a month for 4 months or something. So each month was led by another person in the band. And we worked so hard at it. I mean, there was like 80 people coming to this thing. Our friend Grayson Curran wrote about it a lot, but because he was coming every time, and we were these new guys from Wisconsin doing all this kind of bizarre shit. And so it was just, we worked so hard on everybody else's vision of it. And we were all so down for it, and we were learning so much and doing things that none of us knew how to do, that we were each teaching one another. And I think it just got to the point where we were all starting to get really passionate about the different directions we all wanted to go. And I just it kind of pressure cooked me into having these songs, and I got really sick. I was like in bed with mono for a whole summer, and that was right around that time that the band was kind of breaking up, and I was like really homesick, and I started working on the songs that would have been for Emma, and it just sort of happened. And then I was sort of pretty disheartened, pretty sad, and I went back to Wisconsin to my dad's cabin, and the story goes I finished it, but I thought I was going to go back to school in the fall to be a music teacher or something, you know. And then I just put it on MySpace, and then here I am, you know. It's really how it goes.
So when you talk about the different directions that people wanted to go, I mean, a couple of things. One is it's interesting because a lot of folks who are not well-versed in Bon Iver associate your sound with that For Emma album and this concept of this sort of solo singer-songwriter in the most classic sense of it. Not the 70s James Taylor sense of it, but this, super just a person with a guitar, ancient concept of it. And yet, the band that you had just broken up with, was very far-reaching and experimental in the way that Bon Iver has become, in the way that some folks along the path might think like, oh, this isn't what I think of as being Bon Iver, but it's like, well, this is what Justin Vernon has been doing for a while. But the songs that you ended up making for Emma, is that when you say you had these different directions you wanted to take it, at the time, that's kind of what you wanted to do. You wanted to do the more sparse, plaintive singer-songwriter thing.
I think so. I don't know if I knew what I wanted to do. I just knew that when we were starting to rehearse and work on records, that we were just kind of starting to more categorically disagree with like kind of what our goals were. So I didn't really know. And while it was tough, it was very challenging, and it certainly made me grow. We all grew an incredible amount that year. I think it was more just like out of necessity. And also I had a little bit of a bad poker habit for a couple years, and I didn't have very much money to begin with, but I'd basically lost all my money playing poker, and I'd sold a couple instruments, and so all I had left was this Silvertone guitar and my Mac G4 and my Digio 1 Pro Tools setup and like a shaker and one SM57 microphone. And so it was really just like that's all I had left. Not that I had this huge amount of studio gear, but with the band, we had drums and pianos and basses and 4 voices and things like that. And so I think it was just out of kind of necessity. And it really just, I think I really busted through that pressure cooker, and like those guys really delivered me to myself in that way.
You referenced putting the stuff up on MySpace and the way things took off from there. I mean, if you can remember what the urge, obviously it was a whole different landscape for social media and MySpace. But when you put those songs out for the world to hear, what was your sort of best case scenario expectation at that point of what might happen with it? Or was it motivated just by being like, I'm proud of this stuff, I'll put it where you can put it?
I think it's like, in some ways I like to remember it was like, I was just like about to give up and go back to music school. But of course I had like a desire to have a job in music, At that point as the breakup of the band happened, I was living with Ivan and Kelly of the Rosebuds, the great Merge Records band. And it was my first real production job where I produced their record Night of the Furies. And then they asked me to go on tour as their guitar player. And it was my first time I ever was on a proper tour, like 6 weeks. Going around the country, and so it was my first really foray into that. And I was sitting in the back of the van, and I was mixing for Emma on my laptop, and then Ivan would be like, "Oh man, those songs are pretty good, man. You should just, they're like the opener dropped out in like Lawrence, Kansas or something. He's like, why don't you get up there and just sing these songs, man?" And then he was like, "Hey, that was pretty good, man." So I started to feel good about it, and when I finished it, after 2 Rosebuds tours, kind of sitting around and playing with it and kind of moving back and forth to my dad's cabin and stuff, I think my goal was kind of always just to make a CD, have a house, have a family, and be able to play shows around Wisconsin or something. I think when I first talked to my booking agent, Adam Voith, who was really the first guy to call after like the first, blog posts were happening, he's like, "What's your goal, man?" He's like, "I don't know, make $250 a night and just play. I just want to play and go around, and I want to make records. That's all I want to do." And so in many ways, all my, dreams and expectations, while I had, to me at that time, were large dreams, touring the world or touring the United States and playing in a band, it was the ultimate dream. And then just kind of in a very, very short amount of time, they were all just like, shattered. The ceiling was shattered, and then all the adjustment had to come from there. But, it was definitely, was not expecting that. I had a feeling that the stuff that I had made was the best I'd made. Like I'd broken through to something. I did have that feeling. I really did. And I remember showing it to a couple of really close friends. I made 5 copies of the album when it was done, and I sent it to 5 friends, a mentor, a guy that I had sometimes played music with, another guy named Brian Moen, whose girlfriend at the time's mom made the original artwork for the album and stuff. And the 2 of the guys were just like, man, I'm really proud of you. It's just not my favorite stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, like, not like fuck you or anything like that. I was just like, oh, wow, I don't care what they say. I actually know that this is good. And of course, it's like fun to talk about that with them now because it didn't make sense to them. They was like, I don't know about the high singing stuff, man. Because they were used to me doing something different. And we were kind of a good bar band back then. We'd play loud guitar solos and long solos and little jammy and stuff. And so it was just different. But I felt like it was good.
What were some of the things that happened during that initial rush of shattering the ceiling of your expectations that really stood out to you? What were like signposts of that having happened? Like, that really resonated with you as like, oh shit, something unexpected is happening.
Opening for Black Mountain on our first tour, the great Canadian band who were just the best band we could have possibly opened for our first 6-week tour. That crowd, which I wouldn't think that would like us, that we were getting standing ovations and people wouldn't let us leave the stage. And I was like, well, we only have 40 minutes of music. Like, we can't play anymore. And plus, it's time for Black Mountain to come up. But I was just like, people are getting this. And I had never experienced that outside of Eau Claire or, our little residency in Raleigh, North Carolina. We had maybe played 2 shows in Minneapolis my whole life, maybe Madison once. And so it was just such a out-of-body experience to be like, oh, people in Lawrence, Kansas or San Francisco are like fucking with this. I just like couldn't. I was like, that feels good. Like that feels like the first time that I had communicated to people outside of my hometown or my own family or whatever. That was huge. And then I started to just gain a confidence from that, but also very like, I felt like I was playing with house money. So like when I made the second record, it was just, I was like, I'm gonna try to blow this up because why not? I'm playing with house money. That's why I felt like I had so much courage to just make the second record be whatever, start with like a metal song and end with like an 80s sex rock song or whatever it was. I just felt like I couldn't lose because at any point it should go away or whatever. I might as well have as much fun with it as I can.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask was sort of like before it kind of took, a turn that I know you've talked about in other places of where you're like, oh shit, now this is a little bit too much. Mm-hmm. What the new discoveries were for you of what you could now do, what Bon Iver now could be, what it could expand to be now that you knew that folks were listening,
Definitely like hiring musicians outside of my town, outside of my like purview. Aaron and Bryce had that festival Homecoming in Ohio, and I went there. It's probably 2009. It was the first time I'd gone somewhere without my band, and I was just going as the guy from Bon Iver or whatever. But he introduced me to Rob Moose and CJ Camaraderie and all these musicians, and Aaron was just like, yeah, dude, you can do whatever you want. I was like, what do you mean? And all these incredible musicians like, we'll do what you want, like hum a thing and we'll play it. And I was like, what? And so I think I just opened up this whole world, and I got to hire my favorite pedal steel player, Greg Leese, from all these Bill Frisell records that I loved, and he flew out to Wisconsin, and I'm sitting there watching him play on the record, and Colin Stetson and Michael Lewis and all the people that were on that second record. It just gave me this chance to sort of spread my wings in this like arranger way, where it was like, let's use all these different instruments, saxophones, because in high school jazz band, it was all about Duke Ellington's sax section, and me and Rob were talking about how to make saxophones cool that way again, and just doing that, just having the opportunity to spread out and have a studio. That was April Base we'd already opened that, in 2008, and just started expanding the possibilities of the sound, and expanding with nicer studio gear and things like that. And it was just like, let's use all these tools we can.
I mean, from there, is there anything contrarian or about some of the moves you made from there? And not that the music suggests that you didn't believe in some of the expansion of the sound, but knowing what I know of things that you've said about feeling ambivalent about having a growing audience and the attention, that to be more experimental maybe arrived as an impulse that if you don't get it, that's fine by then.
I feel like I'm a pretty nerdy, I was captain of the football team. I was pretty jockey and whatever, but I think I'd been around enough cool people that, like for instance, my friend Ryan Olson, he was working on the Gayngs project, and I helped him amongst all the same amount of time, bring that project to fruition. That was his baby and everything, but just seeing how he worked and how it was just like, he wasn't trying to make money. There was 60 people in the band or whatever. He was trying to just do something cool. Every song 69 beats per minute or whatever, like, and let's have all
Nice.
These musicians that have never played together do stuff that's almost like, sexy or something. And that was so inspiring to me. And then we would go and play shows, and Prince would show up and like watch us play. And it gave me a new kind of confidence of just like, I'm not going to let people, corner me into this place of being, singer songwriter. But it wasn't really cocky. It was more like, it's my duty to like spread my wings and to fight against, sounding the same, or just like doing the thing that's quote unquote successful. That's a very Midwestern ethos. I think we didn't grow up trying to be famous or do the thing. We were trying to be of service to our friends, to try to make something cool to watch on the weekends. We never really had a dream of doing any of that stuff. So, I mean, Ryan was a big influence in that way. And, the song Beth Rest was very much my, like, working on all that Gayngs music with him was definitely like I could just do like a Hornsby kind of song, like I can do whatever I want, and it can feel good, and it can feel real, and it doesn't have to feel like a joke, but it can feel funny too,
I mean, I just want to go back for a second to Prince coming out to see Gayngs shows. What the heck?
I mean,
we just zoom in on that for a minute. Did anyone know Prince was coming?
Earlier in the day, yeah. So we did a thing. The album was called Last Prom on Earth, and there was probably 24 of us that were in the band for the live show. We rehearsed for a week at my house in Wisconsin. We got in the cars and went up to First Ave, and we're like, we're gonna do one show. It's gonna be called The Last Prom on Earth. There were like bowls of condoms around. Everyone was supposed to be wearing their prom gear, and so all these people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, my parents were all wearing prom dresses and shit. And it was so fun, and it was just such a fun environment. And I thought we had just like really done something special, and we had no plans to do anything after that, et cetera, et cetera. And earlier in the day, we had gotten the word from like the guys, Conrad and everybody that worked at First Ave was like, hey, Prince is going to come down, and everyone was like, oh yeah, dude, this is it. And I have to be honest with you, being a huge Prince fan, obviously, I was like, I don't want him to come down. I was like, nah, fuck that. Like now he's going to come and kind of like change the whole narrative of what we're doing today, and it's going to be about Prince. And while I think I understand, and I'm somewhat proud of that attitude, it was really stupid. I should have, but because he showed up and it was amazing and everyone was thrilled. He stood side stage. I mean, I have this one photograph I'll send you after we're done. He's standing next to my brother, who's managing the band. He's got a purple Strat and a little hat and a lavender tie, and he's just sitting there just warming up. And he's sitting there just jamming, and he's watching Mike Noyce, my bandmate from Bon Iver in those early days. He's front and center. He's like shirt off, sunglasses, just being totally and utterly sexy. And Prince is just grooving, watching everybody play. And then Ryan, I remember, I think he was just high on a lot of ecstasy or something, just went over to Prince and he yelled in his ear. He's like, hey man, you're going to come up in the next one, okay? We're going to, and you just play along, He's like, yeah, man, cool. And he was just like grooving. And we get to the last song and we look over and he's just gone. And there was a lot of attitude about that. The monitor guy, I forget his name, great professional monitor guy who was there forever. I don't think he is anymore, but he was like, man, you guys fucked up. You didn't introduce him. I was like, man, he should have just come up here, you know? So nobody knows. He just took off. He was just like, I think they got it. And he just like left, and he was never seen
I think
again.
he loves a French exit. Have you ever seen this clip of him shredding during some Michael Jackson performance, and then he just ghosts?
Yeah, he jumps on a security guard's like shoulders and just is gone. I remember that clip is great. I think he's like James Brown. Michael Jackson comes up on stage with James Brown, and Michael Jackson's like, "You should bring up my friend Prince." And James Brown's like, "Who?" He's like, Prince. Come on up here, Prince. And he comes up and just absolutely takes the whole show over and then just bounces.
Oh my God, that's so amazing. I mean, I'm just, how did Prince even know that show was something that he should go to or would go to? I guess just word gets around town or whatever.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we were doing something kind of cool, and the music was very gaudy and like kind of like, no, it was naughty music, you know, and I think he dug that, and he was just like, this is something cool in town. You know, he was always, you know, pretty championing of musicians, and, you know, in Minneapolis, of course. And I'd never met him before and after. I have plenty of friends that were collaborating with him in his later part of his life, but I never got to meet him or anything. And yeah, it felt like a missed opportunity, but also almost the story's almost better than if he would have got up and played.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can't want for any more in that situation.
Yeah.
It's already past the ultimate level of dream scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
Although that's not an example of someone, it's not like you got advice from Prince, but have there been folks, artists that you admired who bestowed important wisdom over the years?
Yeah, definitely Leslie Feist. I remember when I was working on For Emma in the cabin, my iPod had broken, and I had like a Patsy Cline tape, and I had this one song by a boys choir. I'm forgetting the name of it now, but that's all I listened to is this Patsy Cline tape and this one song on my iPod that was broken. And then the first music I kind of heard after kind of being out there for a couple months and kind of finishing the majority of the record, I heard The Reminder. And it had just come out, and I just fell in love with it. I thought it was the best music. I still do think it's some of the best music ever made. Really, all of Leslie's records are amazing. And only a couple years later, we were doing a co-headlining set of shows in the Southwest. And we became really close friends. And I think she, you know, struggled a lot. I remember like her song 1, 2, 3, 4 came out and was just on the Apple commercial, and she got so massive. And I remember watching her go through that at that point, and she was like, I'm not doing that shit. And I totally respect that. I still do. And I just saw how hard it was. But as our friendships kind of like grew over the years, we'd check in with each other about how you doing with everything. And, you know, Bon Iver kind of kept getting bigger and bigger. You know, I'd check in with her, or we'd get coffee in New York or something, wherever we'd be. And she would just kind of, I'm like, dude, I can't leave the house. Like, I can't even go to the grocery store without people not really mobbing me, not like TMZ level, but just I couldn't really do anything. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can't even like enjoy my own music festival, or I can't even enjoy going to a festival and going to see the bands. And she said something to me that I'll never forget. She was like, just pop the bubble. Just go out there. You're just a person. If you imagine yourself as not a person, you're not. And, you know, she had a lot of other great pieces of wisdom. I consider her a mentor in that way. And in the years, you know, these last few years, like the People thing we did in Berlin, Leslie was able to come through and really get something really inspiring out of that, and get kind of a new lease on her creative life and what she was trying to do with her shows and stuff. And I don't know. She's a big tentpole for me as far as somebody that I've always kind of looked up to. Yeah, I mean, I have a mentor, Mike Perry, lives down the road from me in Eau Claire. He's always been, you know, looked out for me too. And just, I listen to advice that people give me, I think.
It's interesting though, saying like about popping the bubble. It's like, so I imagine that, you know, you did that, or you sort of like, let's not be too precious about it. Let's go. Mm-hmm. But you have set up boundaries of what you're willing to do, and mm-hmm. how much you're willing to push your comfort level. Mm-hmm. And well, I have a couple of questions about that. Mm-hmm. One is just like, is that a movable boundary? I mean, does it feel like, okay, well, it moves. There's sometimes I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be perceived. Other times I'm more like cool with it. Fine, somebody's looking, or maybe they're not looking, but I feel like they are,
Yeah.
and it doesn't fuck with my nervous system.
Well, I was just about to say nervous system. I mean, I've learned so much about this through therapy and things. Like your nervous system is it's a lot like a thermometer, and like if it gets above 100, it's going to take a minute to cool down. And I think for many years I'd just gotten past my comfort point, and then was sort of braced. You know, your nervous system is activated, your fight or flight is activated. You don't feel safe, you don't feel comfortable, and when you have that go on for long enough, you're doing damage. It takes a long time for that to settle down. And I think, you know, that's part of the whole process that I went through on this last record. I actually just sort of like, you know what, rather than like pretend that this isn't happening, that I've become like a mid-level famous musician, that let me just lean into it and accept it and actually try to enjoy it for once. Because for a good 10 years there, I was just blacked out, trying to just kind of pretend it wasn't happening, and, you know, doing things to almost try and trip the system up so that people would stop paying attention to me. You know, I think that was 22 million in a lot of ways. I was just trying to like destroy it, you know. So yeah, I think in the last couple of years, I stopped touring. That was that was the hardest decision I think I'd ever had to make, one of two, and just letting my nervous system calm back down. And I knew that going out on tour immediately after putting this record together for 5 years, it was not going to be okay. I wouldn't make it, no matter how much preparation or therapy I was doing. So making that decision was like hard, but like really smart. And I was able to enjoy it, and I was able to do all these things, promote the record, and actually have fun doing some of the artwork and the promo and all that stuff, and actually enjoy some of that. And that turns out I did. I think that it is a inherently embarrassing thing to promote yourself. It's inherently embarrassing to kind of be in a band and have a logo and be like, this is our shirt and this is what we are. You know, it's like, it's just all like a little silly, except if you're Fugazi, because they, you know, are so principled. But, you know, in order to make a living, or, you know, keep, you know, buying microphones and tools that I want to, you know, use to express myself, you know, you have to kind of do some of that stuff. And I also like, I really do think, I'm not sure that I'll go around and do any of this stuff again with Bon Iver. Like, whatever shape it takes or doesn't take, I wanted to kind of take one last little round and, you know, victory lap, I guess you would want to say, but just like, let me just see what this is like, so I can look back and think, you know, that wasn't all bad. I could enjoy it.
Right. So, I mean, and part of the question about like the flexible boundaries is because I'm curious, is the current set of not rules, but guidelines you have for yourself, you know, is the final, is there that sense of like, no, I've decided I'm not touring as Bon Iver anymore, period. Or do you feel like for now, that's the vibe for now, and in 2028, I might say, you know what, Bon Iver tour is happening?
I think it's very unlikely that I ever return to the mechanism of like selling tickets, putting asses in seats, and promoting a record and playing a show. You know, I'm quite proud of what we accomplished as a band and as a crew in Bon Iver. I thought what we were doing was inventive at times and esoteric at times, and I enjoyed what we brought to that space, especially when we were doing like, you know, free jazz shit in an arena and people were digging it. But there was something that killed me about it in a way that I don't know if there's a good chance I'll never return to it just like that. And I sit and do a lot of like diary entering about what it would look like. But I'm very much in this spot where like I'm gathering. I'm on the slow train to glory in that way. It's like when it happens, what it is will be, you know, conceived of by having a healthy attitude, and one that, you know, I don't know, imbibes a spirit that I think is lost in a lot of rock and roll. And like, let's just go up there and see what happens kind of thing. You know, I enjoy structure, and I enjoy that our production and our sound system was really, really great. But I missed moving. I missed being able to follow a moment. And you just can't do that when you're going out and trying to put on the best show you can put on every night. It's not enough mistakes. Not the right kind of mistakes, anyways.
Well, and it's very repetitive, and it becomes so much so it becomes formulaic. And yeah, I think it's that thing of having integrity. I mean, which is just such a rare thing, integrity over ego or fear. I mean, it's not even, we all have ego to deal with and reckon with and keep in its appropriate, healthy place, but making decisions out of fear, ego-based fear of losing something, fear of losing income, or fear of slipping from a place that you didn't even like being in the first, but it's, these are things our nervous system does to us. It does that sneaky little thing that pokes you, and it's like, but what if they forget or something? You're like, am I really going to do something that, not to say I hate, but do something that makes me sick?
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid of some weird competitive ego bullshit.
Well, I think the word is validation, and I think my entire ego, my entire personality I'd become self-absorbed, and I think I'd started to become not a great person. I don't think I just did things I'm just not proud of, and just things that don't make sense to me. And I think it's because you become quote unquote important. And then there's, a couple dozen folks that are making a living off of what you're doing. And then there's the community that I love so much in Eau Claire, and my other creative communities, that you start to have this weird thing that happens where you feel responsible for everyone, which is a pretty self-centered thing to begin with. But when your nervous system is so fucked up and is spiking all the time, I think you just start to think, well, the most important thing I could do is just go to the studio and get a bag of weed and just disappear in there, because that's the only thing that I'm really validated with. My relationship with my family, my romantic relationships, they were all just, I wasn't giving almost anything to them, because there was this thing that I was getting so much validation doing. I know we talked about that on your show. It's like I started getting validated for being this kind of a little bit fucked up sad boy. And with a little perspective, I can laugh at that now, but it was really real. And I thought I was trapped. And I also the insecure parts of me, the kid who wasn't invited to the homecoming dance, is being like, no, I am hot shit. See all these, I would never say that, and that's not very Midwestern of me to say, but no, I am hot shit. Look at, they're calling me a voice of a generation, or they're calling me a visionary. I got to keep doing this, because otherwise I have nothing. And I'm really proud that I was able to hit the eject button when I did, because that's just not a way to live. It's not a way to be in the world. It's not a way to make art from. Yeah, and that's that absorption and that validation bullshit that you were talking about, that is a huge trap. And when so many people love what you do, you see it with every musician that I know that have gone through this. You name them. It's just, they go through this thing, they get validated for it, and then they lose themselves in it, and then they become incredibly depressed, and they don't know how to stop doing it, because it's also the only thing they know how to do.
Yeah, and you think you have to. And I mean, I just think it's so fascinating and cool when artists make that decision to just say, I don't actually need this. And if someone like Fiona Apple, for instance, another example I think of is Gautier. I don't know if you ever think about Gautier.
I do, actually, yeah.
But that guy, he was just sort of no fucking way am I doing that again. Yeah. It's not for me, and I don't mind if it's all over, And I mean, because it's unstable anyway. Yeah. It's not reliable. It's not like the job for the electric company that you clock in and you're you've got your sort of your pension, and if you just toe the line, it's going to be fine. There's so much risk involved that, so you mentioned the diary and the sort of beginning of ideas, and not to by any means pin you down on what are some things that you haven't had the space to do yet that feel like exciting creatively to maybe have on the sort of the dream quest
Great.
portion?
I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. I think It's like there are a lot of questions that don't have answers, but like, all right, how would I play music that wouldn't necessarily be surrounded around my narrative, my songs, but bring those songs to a space like that. Like I keep thinking about a review, like a 20-person band full of different musicians and different singers, and being able to sing each other's songs and do it in a place where you can kind of set up and master the space with the sound system, and kind of like the studio stuff we were talking about, like getting it set up so that you walk in and not that you expect perfection, but you walk in and you can understand how to sing on that microphone. You don't have to do it with in-ears. You can just listen to the band around you, and it's not about like hitting your marks and click tracks and stuff like that. And I think about sometimes, like, what if I just went to some capital person and be like, give me $100 million and I'm going to build the best venue in the world, and we'll build a hotel and women's shelters and a YMCA, and like it's like kind of like dreaming in that sort of space too. And there's drawbacks to that, and it's just balancing out what it is I want to do with what's realistic. And I know that I won't answer all those questions in my lifetime, but I really enjoy right now having the time and energy to think about some of those things. So I don't have a lot of answers for you about what it is that I know. Otherwise, I'd be doing it already.
Right.
But it's really about really going down the list of all my like diary entries when I was really sick on the road and just very unwell. It's like, it's not this. It's not getting mugged in Adelaide, Australia, as I'm overly exhausted about to play the last show of a grueling 1-month tour. It's not just trying to sell the most amount of tickets. It's not this, and this, and this. It's more about what I know, what it isn't, so that I start to understand what it could be.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to hear or see or experience whatever it might be.
Me too. I think we're trying to think about some stuff in Eau Claire. We used to do that festival. We're like trying to do baby steps on certain things, but also I want to protect like the new ideas as well. But yeah, working on it. You'll be the first to know.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a great place for us to wrap.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks again to Justin for that conversation. And thank you for listening to episode 131 of the LSQ podcast. You can find others at jennylsq.com and on podcast platforms. You can reach me by email at lsqpod@gmail.com, and on socials, I'm at JennyLSQ. I'll talk to you next time.